Welcome to the Wander in Germany podcast. Your host is the founder of the Wander in Germany travel blog and the Travel in Bavaria Facebook group, Leanna Brown.
Hello and willkommen to another episode of the Wander in Germany podcast. I'm your host, Leanna Brown from the Germany travel blog, Wander in Germany. And today we're going to talk all about accommodations. In fact, this is a pretty big topic. So what I wanted to do was break this up into 3 hopefully mini episodes. Think of today's episode as an almost what to know before even beginning to look for hotels in Germany. Now, I know that might sound excessive, but you'd be shocked at how many people who are still traveling in Germany right now, or they just got back from Germany, they flock to my Facebook groups and they start to complain about something that really at the end of the day was just simply not the norm to them. But maybe what they are complaining about is very common here in Germany and quite honestly, most of Europe. So what we're going to talk about today is just simply being aware of some of the cultural differences and nuances and that you might find just in hotels alone. Like, we're not even talking about cultural nuances on the street and the restaurants and things like that. We're talking about like the rooms, the hotels themselves, the booking processes. And sometimes just having this awareness is simply enough to set the right expectations, which honestly, that alone, having those right expectations can make or break foreign trips, in my opinion. Also, having this information in your mind is going to make the actual searching, filtering, narrowing down, and deciding on which hotels to book so much easier when you know exactly what to expect from German hotels. So I'm going to do my best to keep this episode short. Good luck with that. And we're actually going to break this whole topic of lodging and accommodation into 3, hopefully shorter podcast episodes. So today, I'm just going to go over the different kinds of lodging and accommodation that you'll find in Germany and what to expect from those. And then next week, I'll go over some of the very important differences between Germany hotel rooms and US hotels, for example, and specifically like how they're different, because this is sometimes a big shock for people, and that you'll really want to keep in mind as you begin actually searching and booking those hotels. And then finally, I'll do another episode where I'll do a whole podcast on actually how I personally search for, personally book hotels and accommodation here in Germany, including my favorite booking platforms and, of course, all of my insider tips for getting great places to stay at affordable prices. Okay, so let's start with the different kinds of accommodations in Germany. So the first are, no surprise, hotels, right? Like, hotels in Germany are going to range from one-offs to European chains to international chains. And you're probably pretty familiar with most of these. Like, we're talking Marriott, Hilton. And of course, there's also, like I said, the European chains. And there's also just general hotels here that are, big hotels, but, maybe a chain, maybe a one-off, but they're a hotel. It's what you would expect from those kinds of hotels. These are going to be your pretty standard style of accommodations, kind of, those cookie cutter rooms. And now there may be some differences from what you're used to in the US or elsewhere in the world, but I want to cover all the types of lodging first. And then, like I said, in next week's episode, I'll actually talk about like the main differences of what to expect culturally from them. But I think it's important to know just the different kinds of accommodation first. But with all that being said, I do think it is important to note right now that just because you might be familiar with, say, like the Hyatt chain, doesn't mean that it's going to be exactly as you're used to in the US. Is it going to be similar? Yes. But are there still going to be some differences that you're going to want to be aware of if you're used to staying at something like the Hilton, the Hyatt, the Marriott? Yes, but we'll talk about that next week. Now, the next type of lodging in Germany, and probably the type that I use most, are pensions. These are more of your mom and pop or family run style, still hotels. And I love these because while, yes, some of them can be big, like an actual hotel with plenty of rooms and things like that, they're usually still pretty charming in Germany. In fact, here in Bavaria, a typical pension is often decked out with like super old antiques in the hallways. And here in Bavaria, if you book a pension, usually breakfast is included, which I will talk about as well next week. Sorry that I keep saying that. I want to really stick to the topic here today of different styles of hotels, but just kind of know that all of this is coming next week. But yeah, a pension just kind of feels more local to me. And I guess I could clump B&Bs, so bed and breakfasts, like actual bed and breakfasts, into this because while most pensions are going to be bigger than a typical bed and breakfast, they still have that same, vibe where you kind of feel like you're in a cozy and inviting home, but yet you still have your own room. There might be several rooms. And yes, there are actual bed and breakfasts in Germany, but actually surprisingly not a ton outside of Airbnbs. So of course, when I say bed and breakfast, I envision kind of like this old school, you're actually in somebody's home where there's a family room, a kitchen, things like that. And you basically have your own bedroom, but a lot of shared space. And it's like somewhere between a hotel, an Airbnb, and a pension. And I would say that there's not a ton of those in Germany. So to me, a pension is kind of the best of all worlds because you get still that feeling of a hotel, but like I said, it's usually family run and it just usually feels nice and cozy. So speaking of B&Bs, the next lodging is apartment stays or apartment hotels. Now we all know Airbnbs and VRBOs, and personally, I'm in a pretty mixed opinion about Airbnb currently. Maybe that should also be another episode. I love the concept of Airbnb, but I really struggle with the ethics of the company itself. But again, that's like a whole other topic, from the gentrification that's happened because of Airbnbs in recent years. It's just become apparent that Airbnb also doesn't take the safety of the guests very seriously, doesn't always support the hosts with issues. And honestly, it's very easy to skirt taxes and, your typical safety laws and regulations. Of course, there's other apartment style booking platforms like VRBO, but we're still kind of facing the same, gentrification issues and things like that with them. So now at the end of the day, Airbnb is legal in Germany. Some places in the world, Airbnb is actually illegal. Now, some cities in Germany have put restrictions on it. And I'll be honest, I still use Airbnb. I really do. Granted, I try to use other options first. In fact, I'll go into detail on exactly how to find apartment hotels when I get to that podcast episode. But if an Airbnb is all good on being legal, they're paying their taxes, they're meeting their safety standards, all of that, then most likely they will also be listed on things like booking.com. So I tend to go through those platforms first, even for apartment stays. But of course, there's the odd time that booking.com doesn't have what I need when it comes to an apartment or a house style stay, especially since I travel as a family a lot of the time. And so, yeah, I'm kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out on my opinion with Airbnb and probably a little hypocritical, but, obviously it exists. And obviously there are other options as well, though. Now, if you're looking for an authentic apartment stay in Germany, there's actually a specific name for it, and it's existed well before the concept of Airbnb, and that's a Ferienwohnung, which literally translates to holiday apartment. And like I said, these have been around for so long, even before Airbnb was even a thing, and are particularly common in places like ski towns and resort kind of areas, but really you can find them just about anywhere. The thing that I like about a Ferienwohnung is that while Airbnb is nowadays often run by larger companies, and sometimes they go and even buy out places, but a Ferienwohnung today are still often run by local families. Now, a Ferienwohnung can be a little bit harder to find on the internet if they are not listed on places like Airbnb or Booking.com, but they're still a really great accommodation lodging option. A Ferienwohnung can also be pretty helpful if you're not booking things ahead of time. So, for example, you can often drive through an alpine town or a village and see signs on the houses that say Ferienwohnung, and you can stop in to see if they have availability. I would say that between hotels, pensions, and apartment stays, these are usually the main accommodation types that people use when they come to Germany. But there are a few more that I want to mention that are really unique, and I think they should be on your radar. So the first are farm stays. Now, they're actually called Bauernhotels, literally farm hotels. And especially with a family, I love staying at these because the kids love them, but even as just adults, they can be really unique experiences. So basically, it's just what it sounds like. There is so much farmland in Germany, so many of the farmers have decided to build hotels on their land. Most of the time, these are legit, completely normal hotels. So it's not like you're sleeping in a barn or anything, although that actually does exist too. That's called a Heu. That's spelled Heu, a Heu hotel, where you pretty much sleep on hay. And yes, it's usually a pretty cheap accommodation style. But no, the Bauernhofs are actually more like the pensions. They're just literally on a farm. Usually the farms have animals, and sometimes you can even go and help out with farm chores, or at least, pet the animals like the goats. The farm stays that we've stayed at usually have toys and a playground for the kids as well. And if there's cows, you can often order fresh milk daily. And, it's just really a whole vibe. Another really amazing accommodation for families in particular are Kinderhotels. Now, before I begin to describe these, you have to know these are not cheap, like far from it. But for a splurge, or, if you've got money to spare, then these hotels are seriously like a dream come true for families traveling with kids. These are essentially all-inclusive resorts, but specifically designed for kids and families. So imagine a place where every detail caters to children, from toy-filled playrooms to fairy tale-like outdoor playgrounds. What's really great is that these hotels focus on kid-friendly rooms as well. So they're completely kid-proofed. They have potty training seats for the toilets and the bathrooms. There's baby bathtubs. There's diaper pails in each hotel room. Some even offer things like baby food. It's just perfect for families. And also, pretty much everything is included that you might need. I mean, I would hope so for the price that you pay at these, but essentially you're going to get meals, drinks. Most even have some sort of childcare services, and they almost always come with amazing pools. Now, I've only done a few kinder hotels simply because of the cost, but if you can swing it and you have a family, you'll never want to travel with kids any other way. I've gotten so spoiled on these, and I seriously wonder, how is this concept not caught in the US yet? Now, a quick note on the name Kinderhotel. So Kinderhotel is actually a brand. Even certification is a better description. So if you literally Google Kinderhotels, you'll see that it's actually not a chain of hotels. Instead, different, often family-oriented hotels, like individual hotels, can apply to get the Kinderhotel certified, for lack of better words. But when most people talk about these family-style resorts, they just lump them all into the Kinderhotel description. And the reason why I mention this is because there are plenty of other quote-unquote Kinder hotels or Kinder-style hotels in Germany, but they won't actually fall under that label because they don't have the Kinderhotel certification. So another popular brand is called Familienhotels. But basically, if you Google either types of these, you're going to find what you're looking for that are basically these, big resorts that are perfect for families. Another hotel type that you might want to have on your radar are the castle hotels. Yes, you can legit stay in a real-life castle hotel in Germany. So you have to know, my imagination loves to run wild. And if you've been on the Wander in Germany blog at all, I love ruined castles way more than the posh palaces here. I just feel like I can transport myself back in time in my own little mind, that I'm like some countess walking around the courtyards or something in the ruined castles. So naturally, the first time I heard of a castle hotel, I really oddly got excited at the thought of staying in a stone building lit only by candles and feasting like a king at a long wooden table and, just pretending like I'm the queen that I am. I was actually pretty disappointed to find out that pretty much all castle hotels today are actually very modern on the inside and don't look like what I would envision this old castle to look like. Now, granted, the more I thought about it, the more I liked the idea of, a real toilet, not like a chute, or being able to charge my phone at night with electricity. So, the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, wait, this actually makes more sense. So, the reality is that these castle hotels are in original, amazing old castles, but the insides definitely look and feel more like a hotel. And some of them definitely go with the castle decor theme where, maybe there's a knight in the hallway or there's a 4-poster bed in the room and things like that. But it's going to feel very modern. Like, it's not going to be like you're living in the Middle Ages. In fact, I'm really excited because I'm staying at 2 castle hotels along the Rhine River in a few months. And I think it's going to be really cool to, play out my inner fantasy while also getting to stay at these castle hotels. Another hotel type that I want to mention are wellness hotels. Now, these hotels might just be one of my favorite kinds, but that's because I'm a complete sucker for the sauna and spa culture of Germany, which is, again, a whole other conversation. But the reason why I wanted to point this out is because while the budget for a wellness hotel can obviously range, the reason why I love these hotels, besides the whole, spa and sauna aspect of it, of course, is that you can actually find really reasonable prices for this kind of lodging. So at a wellness hotel, many times at least a breakfast, sometimes often even dinners can be included, sometimes even lunch as well, depending on the package. And of course, then you get access to the hotel's in-house saunas, steam rooms, pools, and wellness centers. Shockingly, you can get these kinds of wellness hotels for less than 150 to 200 euro a night, and it feels like you are being totally pampered. Okay, so the final kind of accommodation I want to talk about is hostels. I think that hostels often get a really bad reputation for being dirty and grimy and just for cheap backpackers. But especially here in Germany, hotels are often really amazing budget accommodation options, even for families. Yes, I said families. So yes, of course, there are like those kinds of hostels we all know about, or, maybe even used back in our college backpacking days. But nowadays, there are tons of hostels that are truly just more of like community style accommodations. And many even cater to families or couples. In fact, I've stayed at numerous hostels in Germany that specifically have either, couples or family rooms. So the family rooms often have a double bed plus 1 or 2 pairs of bunk beds. I've also stayed at hostels where it's basically a bare bones hotel room, like nothing fancy about it, but it's got a bed, it's got its own sheets, and shoot, many of them even have their own bathroom, which is like a far cry from the hostels that I was used to using back in my early days of traveling. A lot of these have really great community spaces, and they're more almost like really, really cheap hotels than what I used to consider an actual hostel. Of course, those hostels exist too, but if you read the reviews, you'll pretty quickly know which kind of hostel you're looking at. Now, the thing to know about some hostels in Germany is that some do require kind of like a subscription or like a membership, which does cost extra to be a part of. But by having that subscription or membership, you get a couple extra perks and benefits and things like that. But it's definitely not a bad idea that if you are planning on going the hostel route while you're traveling in Germany, these organizations are really not a bad idea to look into for those benefits. All right, so those are really the main types of lodging to expect here in Germany. Of course, you can find things like couch surfing, camping, Although on that note, camping in Germany is not like it is in the US, and it is definitely not always a budget option either. And I can cover that in another episode too, because we actually do love camping in Germany, but it's just not the same as the US. And of course, there's other one-off types of accommodations, but the ones I listed are pretty much the main ones that I recommend you starting your searches with. And like I said in the beginning of this episode, this is actually only part one of our hotel and accommodation little mini series, I guess we could call it, because next week I'm going to prepare you for some major differences between US and Germany hotels that you need to know about before booking your hotels. And then the week after that, like I said, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I find and book the hotels that I stay at. But of course, if you need any other trip planning help for your journey to Germany, I've got plenty of other articles on the blog at wanderinggermany.com, including roundups of some of my favorite hotels in different cities and locations. So with all that being said, with all these accommodation episodes coming up, that means if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do so now so you get those notifications for those next episodes. And as always, you can join our Travel in Bavaria Facebook group to ask personal questions to help you plan your trip as well. Thanks again for joining me, and until next time, bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss!